to Department 1. We got a screen that is, except for one. Mr. Miata, Mr. Lewin. Detective Coulter has resumed the witness stand. All of our jurors now are present. And Detective, I will remind you that you're under oath. Mr. Bailey, and you may resume your examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. So, this statement you documented from Paul Kaufman, we've identified at the break a portion of that statement. Do you have that in front of you?
Yes.
Can you please read into the record for the jury that portion of what Paul Kaufman told you?
Kaufman stated that at one point Berman had told him that Durst, I'm sorry, I'm going to go back. Kaufman stated that at one point Berman had told him that Bobby Durst had killed his wife. Kaufman is unsure, but he thinks Berman had told him that Durst had made this admission to her. Berman related to him that Bobby's wife was a beautiful woman who was attending medical school and that she was going to leave Durst. Berman stated that Durst flipped out, but he didn't mean to do it.
Thank you. When you write, Kaufman is unsure, but he thinks Berman had told him that Durst had made this admission to her, did Kaufman tell you he was unsure that that statement was ever made from Susan Berman to him, or is he unsure whether Susan actually said Bob told her that statement?
The latter, the second.
Okay, but he didn't hesitate that Berman said that to him, that Berman had told him that Bobby Durst killed his wife?
No.
Okay. And did he express any hesitation to you when he told you Berman related to him that Bobby's wife was a beautiful woman who was attending medical school and that she was going to leave Durst? Berman stated that Durst flipped out but didn't mean to do it. When he gave that portion of the statement to you, did he show any hesitation that that's in fact what she had told him?
No.
I'm going to fast forward to October 11th of the year 2001. On that date, did you receive information from a Detective Cody Cazalis from the Galveston Police Department?
Yes.
And that's Galveston, Texas?
Galveston, Texas, yes.
Okay, and when Detective Cazalis called you on that date, what did he tell you?
That's hearsay. Objective.
Non-hearsay purpose.
Yeah, just to explain the subsequent course of conduct.
Okay, overruled.
Detective Cazalis advised us that Robert Durst had been arrested in Galveston, Texas, and that some weapons had been recovered.
Okay. And at some point, did Bobby Durst become more of a focus of your investigation for the murder of Susan Berman?
Actually, that day, yeah.
Okay. Is that the day you really began focusing on him?
Right. Initially, we had heard the name Robert Durst, and we had done background on him, just like we had on everybody that was an associate of Susan Berman that we wanted to interview to learn about Susan Berman.
Okay.
It wasn't until this incident that we focused on Durst.
Okay. A few days later, on October 24th, 2001, did you receive some further information from Detective Cazalis?
Yes.
What type of information did you receive?
Hearsay.
It's,
Is not hearsay purpose for this information?
yes, and it's also subject to a stipulation I'm about to do.
Very well, overruled.
What type of information did you receive?
That they, Durst had flown from San Francisco to Kennedy Airport in New York on the 23rd of 2000, December 23rd, 2000.
Okay, and was that on American Airlines?
Yes.
Was this the first time, as an investigator on this case, that you had received information that Robert Durst potentially may have been in California around the time of Susan Berman's murder?
Yes.
Okay, and the information you received that he potentially had flown from San Francisco to New York City on December 23rd, 2000?
That's correct, right? We didn't know where he was before that.
Okay. Your Honor, I have a 14-page document from American Airlines. May I mark this as People's 142?
People's 142, all right.
And I have a stipulation. May I mark this as People's 143?
Yes.
And I'm showing People's 142 on the wolf. The stipulation is as follows. The documents marked for identification as People's Exhibit 142, date stamped LADA 158634 through LADA 158647, are true and correct copies of American Airlines business records, AA records, we'll call them. On pages LADA 158642 through LADA 158643, the fields on the records can be properly interpreted as follows.
Mr. Bailey, can you just say for the record what stipulation this is?
The number, the exhibit is 143, but the stipulation is number,
One.
stipulation number 1.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you.
The field name indicates the passenger's name. The field flight indicates the flight number. The field date indicates the date of the flight. The field board PT indicates the airport code where the flight was boarded. The field DEST indicates the airport code of the flight's destination. The field ticketing indicates information about where and when the ticket was purchased. Quote, DURST R period SF 0443J space 2116/23DEC, end quote, indicates that the ticket was purchased by an individual named R. Durst at the ticket counter of the San Francisco Airport, SFO, on December 23rd at 21:16 hours or 9:16 p.m. The field phone indicates the telephone number provided by the customer. Line AA 0018P 23DECJ SFO JFK HK 01 1000P 628A 24DECS indicates that Flight 0018 was scheduled to depart SFO on December 23rd at 10 p.m. and arrive at JFK at 6:28 a.m. on December 24th.
So stipulate?
Stipulate.
Court accepts your stipulation. Thank you.
Okay. So you received this information. Did you have subsequent contact with American Airlines yourself?
Yes,
Okay. And did you learn that in fact passenger named R. Durst had purchased a ticket the same day of the flight on December 23rd from San Francisco, flying to JFK?
yes,
Did you, on November 14th, 2001, serve another search warrant for Mr. Durst's AT&T wireless cell phone records, phone number 415-999-7612?
yes,
Did you, in that search warrant, request from AT&T Wireless all calls made from that cell phone from November 1st, 2000 through December 31st of the year 2000?
yes, I did.
And did you receive those records on or about November 19th, 2001?
Yes,
And did you book them into evidence as item 77?
yes,
You and I have a 31-page document. It is records sent in response to a subpoena from AT&T Wireless. May I mark this as People's 144?
Yes, 144.
May I approach?
Yes.
I'm showing you what's been marked as People's 144. Are those the records you received from Mr. Durst's cell phone with the number I indicated?
yes,
And when you had received those records, did you, I assume, review them?
yes.
Did you learn something that to you seemed out of the ordinary?
Well, phone calls made on that wireless, there were several every day up until November 4th, and then it stopped completely.
Was it November 4th or November 14th?
I'm sorry, November 14th, my mistake.
Okay. So in reviewing these records, was there calls regularly made on just about every day from that cell phone?
Yeah, several a day, yes.
From November 1st, the date you requested the records, through November 14th?
Correct, yes.
And then from November 15th through the end of the time period requested, the end of December, were there any calls made from this cell phone?
No,
Did it appear that this cell phone was no longer used after November 14th?
that's correct, yes.
I'm going to fast forward now to November 30th of 2001. Did you receive information that Robert Durst, after he had posted bond in Galveston, Texas, had been arrested for shoplifting in Pennsylvania after he being released on bond?
Yes, I received a call from Joe Becerra, New York State Police.
Okay, and you got that call on November 30th, 2001?
Yes,
Did you, on April 30th, 2002, after Mr. Durst, sometime after Durst had been arrested in Pennsylvania, did you travel to Galveston, Texas?
yes,
And did you travel there on April 30th, 2002?
yes,
Prior to traveling there, had you obtained a court order ordering Mr. Durst to provide handwriting samples?
yes, I did with the courts in Galveston.
And who did you, when you went to Galveston, Texas, did you bring with you a forensic document examiner from LAPD SID's division?
Yes, it was Karen Chirodit, Chiarodit, I believe it is,
Okay.
who was a supervisor for the handwriting unit.
And I asked you if you traveled on October 30th, 2002. Actually, is that the date that you actually met with Mr. Durst to obtain these handwriting samples?
Right, that's the day we did the handwriting.
Okay. Who else from your memory was present other than yourself and the LAPD forensic document examiner and Mr. Durst?
Well, good old Mr. DeGuerin was standing there, and,
I'm sitting, but I'll stand.
well, you were standing in the room during the handwriting.
I sat for a while, I thought.
Oh, okay. And then Chip Lewis was sitting there, and I believe they had a handwriting expert of their own that sat in, but I don't recall her.
Okay. And while you were there, did Mr. Durst provide handwriting samples?
Yes, on the instructions of Casey, or Miss Chirodit.
You call her Casey?
Casey, that's what we call her. I can't say that last name.
So did Casey present Mr. Durst with some forms?
That's correct, yes.
Did she tell him, write this, write this, write this?
Yes, she did.
Your Honor, before I do that, did you take these handwriting samples when they were done?
Yes,
And you brought them back to Los Angeles?
correct.
As part of your investigation, did you collect other known samples of Mr. Durst's handwriting, just from, say, the DMV, from letters he may have written, etc.?
Yes, we did.
Okay. I have another stipulation. May I do this now, Your Honor?
Yes?
I have a document. It's a 10-page document, and it has K1 marked on the bottom. May I mark this as People's 145?
Yes.
I have another document, and I have the page numbers written, sorry. $30-page document, and it has the labels K2 through K25 on the actual documents. May I mark this stack of papers People's 146?
Yes?
All right, so I have a stipulation. May I mark this as People's 147?
Yes.
Okay. The documents marked for identification as People's Exhibits 145 and 146, and as referenced as K1, that's People's 145, and K2 through K25, that's People's 146, each contain the known handwriting and or handprinting of defendant Robert Durst. People's Exhibit 145, aka K1, was written by defendant Robert Durst at the request of law enforcement and pursuant to a court order. People's Exhibit 146, aka K2 through K25, contains various writings that were collected during the investigation. So stipulated?
Stipulated.
Okay.
Or
And
accept the stipulation.
thank
Thank
you.
you.
And K1 through K25, are those reference indications that you provided, or was those provided by forensic document examiners at some subsequent time?
I don't know, I haven't seen what you're holding in your hands there, so I can't say unless you show me.
Sure. May I approach?
Yes?
Okay, this is what now?
That's one. I'm showing you 145.
Okay, P145, K1, these are the handwriting exemplars that were obtained in Galveston, Texas. KC, our handwriting expert.
Those are the ones you saw Mr. Durst write.
Yes.
And People's 146, or if you just flip through those documents, are those some documents you obtained during the course of your investigation? When you were gathering handwriting examples from Mr. Durst?
Yes.
Things he wrote.
Yes, they are various handwriting samples.
When you saw Mr. Durst writing People's 145, providing these samples, did you notice anything unusual about the way he was writing these?
Well, when he was instructed to write in cursive, everything was fine. He would write it. When it came time to do printing, it seemed like he was slow and deliberate and would almost write the letters in reverse, like going, instead of clockwise, writing them in counterclockwise, almost like he had been rehearsed or practicing.
Non-responsive stricken, the part about rehearsing.
Well, did you see him write any letters backwards?
Yes, that's what I say, counterclockwise.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as People's 145, the page that's date stamped 37805. You see the second line I'm pointing to here?
Yes,
You see how that S is written backwards?
yes.
Is that one of the letters you saw him writing backwards?
Right, Casey had him write the address in Beverly Hills several times.
Okay. And you see how the L's in this, see how the L's look in this Beverly Hills he wrote?
Yes,
And then you see how the L's look down here in this Beverly Hills he wrote?
Right.
Actually, my pen is not.
yes.
Did it appear to you that he was making a conscious effort based on what you saw to alter the way he would write certain letters?
That's
That was my
suggestive.
opinion.
Hold on. That's leading, suggestive, and it's also beyond his expertise.
What was your answer?
That was my opinion, yes.
By the way, did you notice any change in how deliberate he was when he was writing Beverly Hills versus other parts that he was writing?
I don't understand what you mean by change.
Well, when did he start becoming most deliberative? What types of letters was it when he started pausing and what you described as thinking about what he was writing?
Oh, when he had to do anything that was like a block letter or printed letter, his cursive he was fine in writing, appeared normal. It was block letters or printing, which obviously the Beverly Hills was part of that.
Okay. So let's go back to your investigation. On July 11th, 2002, did you obtain records from Bank of America for Robert Durst's Visa card?
Yes.
And what was your purpose of obtaining those records?
Well, one, we were trying to see what kind of charges that he had on his phone during that time. 'Cause
On his credit card, you mean?
on his credit card, yes.
Okay. And I have a stack of records. They are 21 pages. May I mark these as People's 148?
Yes.
And I have a stipulation. May I mark this as People's 149?
Yes.
Stipulation is as follows. The documents marked for identification as People's Exhibit 148, date stamped LADA 001421 through LADA 001441, are true and correct copies of documents that Los Angeles Police Department detectives received from Bank of America on July 11th, 2002, called the Bank of America records. The Bank of America records are authentic business records of Bank of America. LADA 001423 through LADA 001424 contain the customer profile information for the holder of this account. Pages LADA 001426 through LADA 001441 contain information regarding specific transactions on the account. The field labeled card contains the card number of the Visa debit or credit card used for each transaction. So stipulated?
Stipulated.
Or accept the stipulation. What number is the stipulation?
4.
Thank you. Stipulation number 4 is People's 149.
Yes.
Thank you.
So you obtained these Bank of America records for Mr. Durst's Visa.
Yes,
You saw the card number associated with that account.
yes.
And did any charges on that account pique your interest?
There were some charges made, it's called airphone. I think when you're on a plane and you want to make a call from the plane, you got to use your credit card. So
Now-
there were some charges on airphone.
Okay. Now, from the Bank of America records, could you tell what plane the calls were made from, or even like what day the calls were made, or can you just see that airphone charges were billed to this credit card?
I don't recall how I exactly came up, but they were on a United Airlines flight. I had to call United Airlines.
Okay, that's what I'm asking you.
Right,
You saw charges for airphone, is that right?
right.
Okay. Did you, prior to getting this Bank of America documents, did you know, like that, you knew by this point that Mr. Durst had purportedly flown from San Francisco back to New York on December 23rd, right?
That's correct, yes.
Did you know or have any information at this point as to when he flew to California?
No,
All right. So after you got these Bank of America statements showing that Mr. Durst had made charges from an airphone, did you, on July 22nd, 2002, request records from airphone?
yes, I did.
And is the business called Verizon Airphone Incorporated?
Yes,
And did you receive those records from Airphone on October 30th, 2002?
right, that's how I found out, yeah. Correct, yes.
Okay. Your Honor, I have a 2-page document from Verizon Airphone Inc. May I mark this as People's 150?
Yeah.
And then I have a stipulation. May I mark this as People's 151?
Yeah.
This is stipulation 3, Your Honor. This document marked for identification as People's Exhibit 150, base stamp LADA 42469 through LADA 42470, are true and correct copies of documents that Los Angeles Police Department detectives received from Verizon Airphone Inc. on October 30th, 2002. Airphone records, we're calling them. The airphone records are authentic business records of Verizon Airphone Inc. On page LADA 42470, the columns can be properly interpreted as follows. Can you see this in front of you?
I can now, yes.
Okay. The column ACIS call ID stands for Airphone Customer Information System and is a sequential internal number assigned to each record. The column call date time indicates the date and time of each call. The column CA indicates the type of credit card used to make the call. VI indicates that a Visa card was used. Column card ID bill indicates the credit card number of the bank card that was used to make the call. Column dialed number indicates the telephone number that was dialed. Column min bill indicates the number of minutes of the call. column ARIN code indicates the airline the call was made from. UA stands for United Airlines. Column tail number. Oh,
Scooter.
sorry. Thank you. Column tail NUM indicates the tail number of the airplane that the call was made from. So, when you receive these records, oh, so stipulated?
Stipulated.
When you receive these records, did you learn that a visa with the card number indicated on People's 150 here, ending in 28479, was used to make several airphone calls on December 19th of the year 2000?
Yes,
And was that the same visa number associated with the credit card visa for Mr. Durst reflected in People's 148?
yes it was.
Okay. So these ended up being the charges from the airphone that showed up on his visa bill.
Correct, yes.
Okay. And you learned from these records that several calls were made on December 19th, 2000 from a United Airlines flight, right?
Correct, yes.
And you had the tail number of the plane, N617UA. Is that right?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. Did you make efforts now to determine what flight was this on October 19th of the year 2000?
Yes, I called United Airlines and they gave me the flight number. I believe it was United Airlines flight number 5.
And was that a flight from JFK to San Francisco
Yes, it was.
on December 19th of the year 2000?
Yes.
Your Honor, I have 5 pages of records from United Airlines. May I mark these as People's 152?
Yes.
And I have a stipulation. May I mark this as People's 153?
Yes.
Stipulation is stipulation 14, Your Honor.
Thank you.
The document marked for identification as People's Exhibit 152 is a true and correct copy of business records maintained by United Airlines, UAL. The UAL records demonstrate that on December 19th of the year 2000, United Airlines Flight 5 departed John F. Kennedy International Airport, JFK, in New York at 11:19 a.m. and arrived at San Francisco International Airport, SFO, at 2:46 p.m. The aircraft for this flight had tail number N617UA. So stipulated?
Stipulated.
All right. So at this juncture in your investigation, you have Mr. Durst flying to New York on December 23rd. Do you now believe, based on the investigation you've conducted up to this point, that he flew to California, San Francisco in particular, on December 19th?
That's correct, yes.
Did you do some investigation regarding where Mr. Durst, what vehicle he owned that he may have had in the West Coast?
He had a SUV. I can't remember if it was a Ford Explorer.
Does a
It was an SUV.
Does a 1996 Ford Explorer
Oh, there you go.
sound familiar?
That sounds familiar, yes.
All right. And at some point, did you do some investigation with respect to Harper Ford, located up in Northern California?
Yes, in the city of Arcata, which is just north of Eureka, California.
Okay. Your Honor, I have a set of documents from Harper Motors in Eureka, California. 5 pages. May I mark this as People's 154?
Yes.
I have a 2-page document. I'm sorry, a 3-page document. It's a CLETS, C-L-E-T-S printout. May I mark this as People's 155?
Yes.
and I have a copy of a certificate of title for a 1996 Ford Explorer. May I mark this as People's 156?
Yes.
And I have a stipulation. May I mark this as People's 157?
And what is the number of the stipulation?
Stipulation 6, Your Honor.
Stipulation 6 is People's 157. Thanks.
Thank you. The documents marked for identification as People's Exhibit 154, date stamped LADA 002973 through LADA 002977, are true and correct copies of business records that the Los Angeles Police Department detectives received from Harper Motors, the Harper Motors record. The documents marked for identification as People's Exhibit 155, date stamped LADA 038888 to LADA 038890, are true and correct copies of official records maintained in the California Law Enforcement Telecommunications System, CLETS records. The document marked for identification as People's Exhibit 156, date stamped LADA 038891, is a true and correct copy of an official record maintained by the California Department of Motor Vehicles. So stipulated?
Stipulated.
So, Detective, during your investigation, did you learn that Mr. Durst had a 1996 Ford Explorer that he kept up in the Eureka area?
Yes.
Did you obtain a search warrant in this case for Robert Durst's Pacific Bell telephone number up in Eureka, number 707-445-3200?
Yes, that was one of his numbers, yes.
And you received those records?
Yes.
And did you request all calls that were made from November 1st, 2000 through December 31st, 2000?
Just like the other ones, yes.
All right. I'm going to pause on that for a second.
Okey-doke.
I have a stipulation, Your Honor. I have a one-page document. It's a check in the account of Robert Durst made out to cash for $9,500. It's the front and back of the check. May I mark this as People's 158?
Yes.
I have a stipulation. May I mark it as People's 159?
Yes.
The document marked for identification as People's Exhibit 158, date stamped LADA 126908, is a true and correct copy, front and back, of a check written and cashed by defendant Robert Durst. Defendant presented this check at 12:47 p.m. on December 20th, 2000 at the Eureka branch of Bank of America, located at 334 F Street in Eureka, California. Defendant received $9,500 cash and did not deposit any portion of this check into his account. So stipulated?
Stipulated. Oh, stipulation 13.
Thank you. Ye- Pardon me?
So,
The stipulation 13 is stipulation number 159. These PAC Bell records, you've not marked those?
I have not marked them yet.
Okay.
So, to these PAC Bell records that you received, I have a stack of Pacific Bell records. They're 50 pages. May I mark these as People's 160, Your Honor?
Yes.
I have a stipulation. May I mark this as People's 161?
Yes. And stipulation number?
7.
Thank you.
The documents marked for identification as People's Exhibit 160, date stamped LADA 042384, through LADA 042433 are true and correct copies of business records that Los Angeles Police Department detectives received from Pacific Bell Records. The records at page LADA 042422 to 042423 can be properly interpreted as follows. These pages reflect calls made using pages reflect calls made using a calling card issued under telephone number 707-677-3200. Under the heading Pacific Bell Calling Cards, the column labeled Date reflects the date the call was made. DE20 means December 20th, 2000. The column labeled Time reflects the time the call was placed. The column labeled Place reflects the location of the number called, as well as the location where the call was placed from. The column labeled Type indicates the type of call made. The word Card indicates that a calling card was used. And the column labeled Minutes indicates the duration of the call. So you received and you reviewed these records?
Yes.
And did you learn that a calling card associated with Mr. Durst's telephone number was used to make calls from Garbersville, California on December 20th?
Yes.
And was there a call made from Garbersville at 2:23 p.m.?
Yes.
Was there another one made at 2:28 p.m.?
Yes.
And was there another one made at 2:33 p.m.?
Correct. Yes.
Now, where is Garbersville in relation to Eureka, California?
Well, I'd never heard of Garbersville, so I had to look it up back then. And it's about 70 miles south of Eureka on the Highway 1 heading south towards...
The 101?
The 101, the 1. It's been us boy here. I don't know the Northern California stuff, but...
It's Garberville, actually.
Garber, I'm sorry.
Garber, yeah.
Garberville.
So it's on the, would you say the 101, the 1? I don't know. It's all the same to me.
But
But
court take judicial notice that Garberville is off of Highway 101.
Yeah, I think it's 101. But I haven't been up there for a while, so let me look. I'll take judicial notice after I confirm that. Okay. Yeah, it's 101.
Thank you. I have a map, and I marked this as People's 160. Is that a 9 or 7? 162. Should have had a map with highways on it. Okay. Does this map fairly and accurately depict where Garbersville is located in relation to Eureka, California?
yeah, it's about 70 miles south of Eureka.
So it's about 70 miles south of Eureka. I want you to assume that someone starts their driving trip in Eureka, California at sometime at approximately 12:47 p.m. Shortly after that cash was checked. That check was cashed in Eureka, California. Okay? And then they're driving towards Los Angeles. Would it be consistent that they are in Garbersville at approximately 2:30 p.m. when those calls were made?
Sure, it's possible, yeah.
Okay.
70-mile drive.
And if you were going to start your trip in Eureka, California on December 20th of the year 2000, at some time after 12:47 p.m., after you cashed the check, and you were going to drive to Los Angeles would Garbersville be on the main route of travel?
As I recall, it's like the only route of travel from Eureka down to San Francisco.
On October 21st of the year 2002,
I'm sorry, what date?
strike that. I'm going to take you fast forward to 2005. June 29th of 2005. Did you meet with Sergeant Gary Jones from the Galveston Police Department?
Yes.
And was this after Mr. Durst's trial in Galveston had concluded?
Yes, it was.
And did Sergeant Gary Jones bring you evidence that he had in his possession in Galveston to you? Or did you meet him somewhere?
Well, I had to get a court order in Galveston, Texas, to have evidence released to me from the Galveston case. Sergeant Jones gave me that evidence from their property room.
Okay. Did he come out here or did you go to Galveston?
No, I went to Galveston.
All right. And did he give you a .22 caliber Ruger pistol?
Yes, he did.
And did you book it in evidence?
Yes, I did.
You want to have an evidence envelope. May I mark the envelope and its contents as People's 163?
Yeah.
There's several firearms, Your Honor. We've cleared them all with the bailiff ahead of time. They've been appropriately checked for safety, as well as a tie has been put through the barrel.
Thank you.
May I approach?
Yes.
People's 163. Do you recognize the writing on that?
Yes, I do. This is a Los Angeles Police Department handgun envelope. Has all my writing on it in black, and evidence numbers. And in red at the top it says Berman, so it's a Berman case.
Okay. And is this a .22 caliber Ruger semi-automatic handgun that you received from Sergeant Gary Jones?
Yes.
And did you book it into evidence in LAPD under DR number 00-082-5485 as item 4095?
Yes, I did.
I'm removing the contents. Is this the .22 caliber Ruger handgun that you received from Sergeant Gary Jones at the conclusion of the defendant's trial in Galveston?
Yes.
Did Sergeant Jones...
You can project it too.
Sure. Did Sergeant...
At the court reporter.
Oh, okay. It's not loaded.
Doesn't matter.
Now you're pointing it at John.
Never point a gun.
Never point a gun.
Never point a gun.
Don't let Dick get it.
I'm, did you receive from Sergeant Gary Jones a 9mm handgun, a Browning semi-automatic?
Yes, I did.
May I mark this evidence envelope and its contents as People's 164?
So I'd recommend that after displaying it, that you then return it to its envelope,
Yes. Thank you.
not leaving it unattended.
Thank you. Showing you what is marked People's 164. Do you recognize the writing on that envelope?
Yes, again, it's labeled the same way, my writing in black. Berman is written up on the top in red. Evidence item 94 is in red.
And is this 9mm Browning semi-automatic handgun? you received from Gary Jones at the conclusion of Mr. Durst's trial.
Yes.
I'm removing the contents.
Yes, that's it.
That's it?
That's it.
That is the 9mm?
Yes, yes.
And this is a semi-automatic handgun?
Yes, it is.
I'm placing it back in the envelope. Did you recover any more handguns from Sergeant Gary Jones at the conclusion of the defendant's trial in Galveston?
There were 2 revolvers that had been recovered at his, in Pennsylvania at the time of his arrest.
Okay. Was one of them a 38 Special Airlight Smith & Wesson?
Yes.
May I mark this as People's 165? 165?
Yes.
And is this your writing on this envelope?
Again, it's the same as the others, same envelope, same writing, evidence item 96.
Okay. And is this one of the 38 caliber handguns you recovered from Sergeant Gary Jones' conclusion of Mr. Durst's trial?
Yes.
Removing the contents. Is this the 38 special that you recovered from Sergeant Jones?
Yes.
Explain for the jury. Placing it back in the envelope. And finally, I have another evidence envelope. I mark this as People's 166.
Yes.
And finally, did you recover from Sergeant Gary Jones after Mr. Durst's trial was over a Taurus brand 38 special revolver?
Yes, it's the same, the envelope is the same, only evidence item 97. And it'll have the serial number of the gun written on the envelope, just like the others.
Okay, and you're referring to People's 166?
You say so. It's evidence item, what did I say,
Is that
97?
People's 166?
Yeah, I look at it as evidence item, so,
I removed the content, and is that the gun?
yes.
That's the firearm that Sergeant Jones gave you
Yes, it is.
from the Pennsylvania arrest?
Yes.
Placing it back in the envelope. Did you also receive from Sergeant Gary Jones a 9mm magazine?
Yes, it went to the Browning, yes.
Okay. And did you book that as item 98?
Yes.
Did you receive from Sergeant Gary Jones another 9mm magazine?
Yes, I did.
And did you book that as item 99?
I did, yes.
Did you recover from Sergeant Gary Jones two separate magazines for the .22 caliber pistol?
Yes, I did.
And did you book one of them in as item 121 and the second one in as item 126?
Yes.
Did you receive a Meade 5-star spiral notebook from Sergeant Gary Jones?
Yes, I did.
And did you book that into evidence as item 102?
I'd have to look at the tag, but it sounds right.
I have an evidence envelope. May I mark this envelope and its contents as People's 167?
Yeah.
May I approach?
Yes.
I can't recall all these evidence item numbers by
I
heart.
don't blame you,
It's
trust me.
just,
That's why I write it on the envelope.
Yeah, evidence item 102, yes.
Oh, the magazine's not marked as,
I did mark them.
He just referred to them without marking them.
Okay. And I'm removing the contents of People's 167. is this the Meade 5-star notebook that you received from Sergeant Gary Jones?
Yes, I believe it still has their evidence tag up in the right-hand corner.
Okay. And just to make sure, this is the Meade 5-star.
Correct, yes, yes.
Okay. And this writing was in there?
Yes, yes it was.
This note from the Hilton Gardens Inn, it says Center for Women and Families in Fairfield, on Fairfield Avenue.
Yes.
That was in there?
Yes, it was.
Okay.
Yes, how it was.
And were there some other paperwork inside of here, which is also in this evidence envelope?
Correct, yes.
Okay, I'm going to place the envelope back in here. Did you, that note had the address on Fairfield, in Fairfield County, Connecticut. Did you receive from Sergeant Gary Jones an atlas for Fairfield County, Connecticut?
An atlas?
Yes.
You gotta refresh my recollection. There was a lot of paperwork. I can't.
I have an evidence envelope. May I mark this as People's 168, I think?
Yeah.
You recognize the writing on the envelope?
Yes, that was my partner at that time, Wally Tonelli. He went with me.
Remove the content.
So, move in the content. Say, it's a Galveston envelope.
Remove the contents of that.
Oh, Fairfield County Atlas, yes. Okay, I remember this now.
Okay. So, did you receive this atlas for Fairfield County, Connecticut, from Sergeant Gary Jones after Mr. Durst's Galveston trial was completed?
Yes.
I'm going to place this atlas back inside both envelopes. Place it in the inner envelope. Place the inner envelope into the exterior envelope. And you put these all into evidence, all these items you described under the same LAPD DR number?
Yes, that DR number is, the first two numbers are the year, second are the division, 08, and then the last numbers are usually the file number,
Okay.
case number.
So, are you familiar with who Mark Smerling and Andrew Jarecki are?
Yes, I am.
And have you met them?
Mark Smerling more so. I met directly once or twice.
Okay. And at some point in 2010 approximately, did Mr. Smerling make contact with you?
Yes, he did.
And did he inform you they were working on a project involving the Susan Berman case?
Documentary, yes.
And at some point, did you meet with him and have discussions with him?
Well, I got calls a lot of times from reporters and people wanting stories. I would always refer them to press relations. But in his case, he said he had some
Excuse me, I object to hearsay.
All right, at this point, the question has been answered, so why don't we go to the next question?
Yeah. Did Mr. Smerling offer to show you something?
Right, some videotaped interviews of Mr. Durst that he had.
Okay. And did you go watch them?
Yes, I did.
And did it pique your interest?
Of course, because he was talking. He never talked to us.
When, at some point, did you provide some information to Mr. Smerling?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Did you provide either a photo or a copy of what's been called the cadaver note and envelope?
I don't specifically recall it, but I probably did at that time. It was known that it was out there.
Did you provide him some crime scene photographs from this case?
I provided him some photos of the residents. I don't provide photos of the bodies out of respect.
Now, let me ask you something. At any point were you working for Mr. Smerling and Mr. Drake?
No, I was getting ready to retire.
At any point, did you give them any directions on what they should or shouldn't do?
No, I just thought it was gonna be a 1-hour documentary.
Did you at any point direct them on who to talk to or who not to talk to?
No,
Okay. Did you just provide them this information?
right?
Why'd you do that? Why'd you let them look at some of these photos from the Susan Berman case? Why'd you let them look at the cadaver note and envelope pictures or whatever you did?
As I said earlier, I used to get calls all the time, especially from reporters in New York. And I never really talked to them. I'm not the most photogenic guy. And so...
It's hard to tell with your mask on.
Yeah, I know. But, so when he had videotapes of Robert Durst, and I knew I was getting ready to retire, I figured I would work with him, hoping to get new information on the case, or to keep the case alive. Because I knew once I retired, it would probably go on a shelf, and nobody would look at it again, like a lot of cases do in LAPD. So that was my main reason for meeting with him. And like I say, I didn't know it was going to be a 6-part whatever, but that's what it turned out to be.
Okay.
But
Well, let me ask you, do you regret meeting with them?
no, not at all. We're here in court today, aren't we? Kept it alive.
Okay. And you said you decided to work with them. Were you guys working together, or were they working independently of you?
No, they're working independently, but they would call me from time to time with a question, or I would meet with Mark at the Robbery Homicide Division if he had questions.
Okay. Did they ever provide you any money or payment for anything you did?
No, I think I got a sandwich, maybe a breakfast or something when I met with Mark, but that was about it.
Okay. Thank you. I have nothing further.
DeGuerin, you may cross-examine.
I have more than 10 minutes.
Of course you
You do?
Yeah, I'm sorry to say that, but
All right.
do. Well, let's get started, and we'll get the first 10 out of the way.
well, good morning, Mr. Coulter, or Detective Coulter,
Good morning.
former Detective Coulter.
Former.
We've met
Yes, we have.
in almost 19 years now, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
I noticed you called me old DeGuerin there.
We're all getting older now.
Yeah, we're about the same age, aren't we?
I don't know. How old are you?
I'm 80. How old are you?
No, I'm just 67.
Oh, really?
I'm a pup. I wasn't wrong.
Well, it was probably when we met, the circumstances were rather tense, but at least we were cordial.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
I didn't consider him tense at all. Sorry you did.
And so the jury can understand that was before the trial of Mr. Durst in Galveston, right?
That's correct. I believe so, yeah.
And the trial in which he was found by a jury not guilty of the murder of Morris Black. Correct?
Yes.
right.
I was waiting for your question.
Thank you for waiting. Let's go, if you will, for a moment to when the case was transferred to you at what I think they call shorthand RHD, or robbery homicide,
Right, Robbery Homicide Division, RHD, yes.
from the West Hollywood Police Department of Detective.
West Los Angeles Division. West Hollywood is the Sheriff's Department.
Okay, West Los Angeles.
West Los Angeles Division.
And I believe you said there were a couple of reasons for that transfer. One of them, it was going to be a high-profile case because Ms. Berman was known to be the daughter of a mafia guy in Vegas, right?
I believe so, yes.
The mafia guy being Davy Berman, whose nickname was Davy the Jew.
Yes, I think so.
And he was the right-hand man until Bugsy Siegel was killed. And he was the right-hand man of Bugsy Siegel, right?
That's what I've heard. It was before my time.
Okay. Well, you knew, of course, that Bugsy Siegel died rather suddenly while being shot,
Yes.
right? Here in Los Angeles.
It's irrelevant, Your Honor.
Well, it's sudden when you get shot, usually.
Or take judicial notice,
Is
Your
it,
Honor, that Mr.
is
Siegel was killed
is
in
the objection that died while being shot, or died suddenly by being shot? Is that the objection? I'm
It's
not.
irrelevant, it's 352. Court's prior third-party culpability rules.
It's overruled anyway. So anyway, that's all true, isn't it? You knew that the legend of the case of, excuse me, the legend of the case of the death of Bugsy Siegel and Davy the Jew taking over in Vegas, and then Susan Berman writing kind of a tell-all book about her upbringing as a mafia princess.
The book Easy Street I learned about when we were there at the house on the 11th.
Okay. By the way, Easy Street, do you know the origin of that name?
No, I've never even read the book.
Well, not the book, but in poker terms, you know what Easy Street means?
No, I'm not a gambler.
Well, you don't have to be a gambler to play cards. Have you ever played Texas Hold'em?
No.
Your Honor, it's interesting.
It's what-
It would seem to be 352.
I don't think it's prejudicial. It's kind of entertaining, I guess.
Sorry, I'm boring you.
Texas Hold'em is where you line up cards on a table in four directions, and Easy Street is when you have a card that'll fit in there and you can win a hand. That's not something you knew?
No, thanks for the lesson.
Okay. So the case gets transferred to you a week or more after Susan Berman was found dead, right?
I would say it's about 2 weeks, yeah, from the 23rd to the 11th of January, yes.
Yeah. And for the reasons that you stated. Of course, you're not responsible for what happened before you got in the case. I understand that, right?
No, I had to work with what I had.
You were dealt, you had to play the hand you were dealt, to put it in poker
Well,
terms.
we're back to poker, huh? Yes, I guess so.
Okay. And had you been involved from the outset, it would have been a different crime scene, wouldn't it?
Possibly.
You learned that between the time Susan Berman was killed and when you took over, that several people had been on the crime scene even while it was still considered a crime scene.
I'm not sure what you're talking about while it was still a crime scene.
Well, within a day or so of Susan's body being removed and the initial detectives came in there, you knew that two people, Niall Brenner and Susie Harmon, separately, independently, had got into the house on their own, right?
That was later on, not during the initial crime scene. Once it was released by Detective Roberts and Hayes to, I believe it was Sarah, I think it was. Then I learned that they had gone into the house afterwards, yes.
And you learned that they basically had broken in, didn't you?
I learned that Niall Brenner had, yes, through I think it was a kitchen window.
And did you learn that Susan Susie Harmon also came through the kitchen window.
I don't recall that. If you have something to refresh my recollection, I'll look at it.
Well, I think it's uncontested that she said that she came in through the kitchen window.
Okay.
It was,
I don't recall it as I
Okay.
sit here today.
well, if she said, assuming she said, that she knew the houses in the Beverly Hills area, and that she knew how to get in them, and she got in the kitchen window, and it was easy.
Well, I
That
don't
wouldn't
know.
surprise you?
You're saying houses plural in Beverly Hills?
I think that's kind of what her
I
testimony
don't
was.
know. I would find that as a surprise, but maybe it was Susan's house, yes.
Okay,
I
well,
don't know.
with Susan's house, and it's uncontested that she got in and went through stuff there, and so did Niall Brenner.
I think Niall said he was looking for a script or something she'd been working on.
Of course, you weren't there, and the police weren't there, and nobody knows what Niall Brenner looked at, do we?
No.
With that, it is now 12 o'clock and time for our recess until 1:30 p.m. Ladies and gentlemen, do not converse among yourselves or with anyone else on any subject connected with this case. Do not form or express any opinion on the case. Detective, of course, don't discuss your testimony with any other witness.
All right, thank you.